I'm Jared.
I'm Marcus.
Level with us. Welcome to episode 10 of Level With Us. Marcus, can you believe that it's been 10 episodes?
Yeah, there's so much to look back on. Is this like our special clip show episode?
Yeah, this is where we reminisce on all of the high points, all of the low points, and have several celebrity guest cameos.
Right. Exactly, yeah.
Today in this video game discussion podcast, we're going to be talking about one of our favorite games, A Short Hike. So, Marcus, would you mind telling people who don't know what A Short Hike is, kind of what kind of game it is?
So a hike is when you walk through usually a scenic path.
Uh-huh.
So a short hike would be a rather abbreviated version of such nature experience.
Uh-huh.
But the video game, A Short Hike, is you play as a little bird, Claire, in a world of little animals. And you're on an island, and you hike this mountain called Hawk Peak. And the game is open world, so you can kind of go wherever, collect feathers, and get extra jumps and fly around. And as the title might suggest, it's a short experience, but very charming in every sense of the word.
I think the best way to describe it to someone who's never heard of it or knows what it's about is it's a mini Breath of the Wild. And it doesn't have combat. It's not a Zelda game. It doesn't really have big puzzles, but it is an open world adventure where the item you collect allows you to climb more and fly more, which lets you access more areas. So you're constantly progressing. And to me, this game is perfect. It's one of the few games I would describe as perfect. I think the controls are perfect. I think the writing is perfect. The music, the overall length, it's a very short game, but it never overstays its welcome. I've logged almost 15 to 20 hours in it, even though you can beat the game in only, one.
Well, you can beat the game in 2 minutes.
Oh, speedrunning. Yeah, absolutely. But I've 100%ed it at least 3 or 4 times. Yeah, and it's such a cozy game. It feels really good to play because it's so serene. You just kind of go wherever you want and do what you want, and what's there to do is really fun.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know what to highlight besides what you've just said. We've kind of covered all the bases already.
Well, tell me about how playing it this time was, because we've both played it a couple times, but for this podcast, we both replayed it. What was that experience like for you?
So the first time playing it, since this is an exploration game at its core, a lot of the first playthrough experience was figuring out where was where and actually getting a little bit lost, even though it's not a huge open world. So revisiting it, I kind of know where everything is. So a lot of it was kind of picking an optimal path. There are these golden feathers that give you more jumps or can help you climb more and make more areas accessible. So revisiting the game, a lot of it was kind of deciding where to go first because I actually know where many of the feathers are. But yeah, it's not that demanding of a game, even the first time I played it. So it's not like it's easier, but it just is kind of a fun, different kind of guided experience because I have an idea of where I would want to go. This is one of the few games that I will recommend to everyone. If I meet someone who's oh, I love video games. I love especially open world video games. I'm you need to play A Short Hike. If someone's oh, I love video games, but I don't really like open world games. I'm oh, you should play A Short Hike. If a person's I hate video games, they're awful. I'm you should play A Short Hike.
Yeah, for real though. I think that would change their mind.
Right, this is a game you can have your mom play, even if she's
really
never played a video game before, because the controls, it takes a while to get used to any controls, but people figure out intuitively how to explore, it's just fun.
On your point of anyone can play this game, I have recommended this to friends who I know don't normally play indie games. Anyone can play it. If you are super into speedrunning, you'll love this game because you can do really short runs and just work on it over and over and get your optimal record going, and it doesn't take 5 months to nail it down, like most games that require 2-hour long speedruns or whatever. People who like cozy games, chill games, people who like Animal Crossing or simple platformers, people who like Mario, I think they would love this game. I already mentioned that people who like Breath of the Wild, I swear you will like this game. In fact, this is in the running with Breath of the Wild to being my second favorite game of all time. They're almost tied. So people who like open world progression, who like the more you explore, the more you're able to explore type of thing, that's great. People who like a good story. Now, I wouldn't say this game has a deep story, but the writing is phenomenal. It's so funny. If you like good writing, you will like this game. In fact, I think the creator, Adam Robinson Yu, really excels in his writing in other games as well.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because this is something I'll talk about a little bit later, but in his GDC talk, he said he was really not excited to write dialogue. He felt like he didn't necessarily have an aptitude for it, but when he put less pressure on himself and kind of wrote the dialogue more like texts, it came more naturally to him, and I think you're absolutely right. The dialogue is very fun. By the way, is this the part where we tell people that this is not sponsored content? Because I'm realizing it sounds like we're like an advertisement for this game, man. We're walking advertisements.
No, it's legitimately that good of a game. Like I said, we recommend it to anyone. This is just us trying to spread the good word because we really like it.
Just us proselyting. Have you heard of A Short Hike?
Have you ever asked yourself, why aren't there any good games out there? Well, I've got the answer to your problems. Well, at the risk of making Level With Us the Let's Gush About This Game podcast, we're going to do that some more. Let's get into Star Pieces.
Okay.
Star Pieces is the part of the show where we share a cool little detail that we found in our playthrough that we want to share with each other. So, Marcus, you're up.
So I mentioned the game designer's GDC talk where he kind of talked about level design. So he highlighted two little things of the world design, the level design of this game that are my star piece. And they both kind of have a similar theme to them of making people have the optimal experience by making them think that they made their own decisions when you're actually guiding their hand. So one of them is shovels. Adam said that he really wanted people to have a shovel early on because he thought that made for a more fun, a more engaging experience, because there are tons of stuff to dig everywhere. So he didn't just put one shovel you can find, he put 6 or 7 across the island, anywhere that's kind of like an initial point of interaction with the world, even in further places if you somehow miraculously miss all the ones on the way. And the reason he does this is because it's very unlikely someone's going to play this game for the first time, see a shovel and not immediately pick it up because it's, red and it sticks out. And the thing is, once you pick up one, all of the others disappear. So you assume when you grab one that you're like, oh, I randomly found the one shovel on this entire island. So I just think that that's really cool. It's very smart. Another thing is if you decide to go right instead of left, and which won't kind of lead you to the first area of the game where you can kind of start getting feathers. If you go around the other way, you'll see a cave with a pickaxe in front of it, and if you dig your way into that cave, the tunnel will lead you straight back to the tutorial area. In fact, that was my first experience of the game. I went right first because I was like, where are the walls of this game? I wanted to test it like people often do. Long story short, I like how the level design leads your hand in simple ways, but ways that you don't necessarily notice.
It's nice to have a game that you can look at the game design and point at it and be like, good game design for something very small that you don't have to dig too deep to see how it works.
Right, it's distilled enough. Mm-hmm.
I think I'll link to Adam's GDC talk in the description so that people can listen to it themselves. I recommend doing it after you've played the game, but it's a really good listen. For my star piece this week, I was discovering a lot of optional dialogue that made me laugh really hard. And there was one in particular that really got me. One of my favorite character interactions in the game is there's a little, it's like a little volleyball court, but it's a game called Beach Stickball. And when the character is teaching you how to play beach stickball, it's very funny. He has so many great lines. But there was one line he had that I had never seen before until this time, and there's also a motorboat you can rent in the game. and I rented it, and I was messing around, and I ended up beaching the boat onto the court. So the boat was just sitting there in the middle of the court, and I'm like, I wonder if I can play beach stickball still while that boat is here. So I got into position, and I pressed A, and the character was like, oh, hey, I just remembered another rule. And you're like, oh, yeah, what? And he's like, no boats on the court. Get that thing out of here. And it just, I don't know, it was just so unexpected. I didn't realize he would recognize that the boat was there. It's little details like that just, I love.
That's fantastic. That's a cool catch.
I didn't want to get into this part of the podcast. I thought about just scrapping this segment altogether for this episode. But really quick, let's do our quick jabs.
And jab.
Quick jabs is where we talk about something we wish were a little different, or just have an excuse to complain about the game. And even though I said this game was perfect, there is one little thing that I think I would love if this were updated or changed, and that is that the draw distance is not super long. And usually that doesn't matter, because it's a top-down game. You only ever see what's around you, and it's flawless, and it's perfect, and it's like 60 frames per second. But when you're gliding from the very top of the mountain, you can do these super long glides all the way around the island. And when you do so, it doesn't show you very much. So like sometimes it's kind of hard to tell where you're at until you get really close to the cliffside, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So I just wish you could zoom out a little more when you're gliding and kind of see where you're headed. Very, very minor complaint, but yeah.
I think it's a combination of draw distance and an intentional choice to put like a pretty thick layer of fog from distant locations.
Sure, yeah.
Which, yeah, I also could give or take. I would much prefer being able to tell where you are spatially as you glide, so
yeah,
it's fair. Yeah, for mine, I was just going to say the camera angle is fixed in most locations where it kind of snaps to new orientations based on where you are. I think a free camera would be nice. I understand why he might have not decided to do that, but I think that would add just another dimension of freedom to it, because then you can like look around things, get lost in the sense that you don't know exactly where you're facing. That's all.
There's probably parts where the camera snaps so that the camera doesn't like go inside the cliff or something.
Yeah.
But I'm with you. I think anything so that you can see the beautiful graphics even more would be great. By the way, this game has 3D graphics, but they have a pixelated filter on them, which I actually really dig. Whenever I'm in handheld, I set the pixel size to big and crunchy because I think it looks really good. It looks like a DS game. But when I'm playing it on the TV, I make it small and tasty, which because it's more smooth and it still looks beautiful. Fingers crossed they make a sequel someday. This game is great. Those quick jabs were barely nothing. But let's get into the fan favorite segment of the Reaper Review. This is the quiz segment of our show where Marcus and I try and stump each other with nerdy trivia questions. Marcus, the floor is yours.
We know so much about this game, so I could do something unique, but I'm going to do something kind of basic. There's a lake in this game. There's a track around the lake. How many runners are running on the track, preparing for the marathon?
Ooh. I really want to say 3, but it might be 4. I'm going to go with 4.
You are correct. Nailed it.
Sweet.
You nailed it just based on feel, just kind of what felt right. I like it.
Awesome. Well, for my Reaper Review question, I'm actually going to be a little generous here. This is a fairly difficult question, but rather than pass or fail for this, I'm just going to do a high score type of dealie and see how many you can come up with, okay?
Oh boy.
So there's a lot of NPCs in this game. Claire's the main character, but right now I want you to name every named NPC, because most of them do not have a canonical name. But there are a few names in this game that I was able to find, and I want you to name as many of them as you can remember.
Okay, Aunt May. Terry the Turtle.
Mm-hmm. Wait, say that again?
Terry the Turtle.
No.
It's not Terry?
It's not Terry.
It starts with a T. Thomas the Tank Engine?
It's Taylor the Turtle, so I'll give you a half point on that one.
Boo. Ian Artsworth?
Yes.
Dude, that's like it. I can tell you like where the characters are located, but as far as their names go, I'm sure one of the rangers is named, either the polar bear or the guy who gives you a compass. I'm sure that the girl you collect seashells for has a name.
She does.
Because you have to report, you talk to Aunt May about her. That's it.
High score.
Well, hey, listen, 2.5 ain't shabby when this game barely ever tells them to you. I'll go ahead and list my list, and I might have even left a few out, but there's Aunt May, or Ranger May. There's Jen. She's the one who likes shells. There's Bill, the fisherman. The parkour racer's name is Avery.
Yeah. Yeah, I had a feeling I'd recognize it. Yep.
There's Ranger John that you meet right at the start, who sells you some feathers. There's Taylor the turtle. There's Sue, and that's Taylor's competitor, the bunny who lost her headband. There's Ian Artsworth, who's mentioned by name, even though the painter who mentions him never says his name. And then there's one of the members of the Global Rock Climbing Club, and his name is Tim. So those are all the ones I could come up with, but hey, good job. Like I said, no pass or fail here. I just wanted to give you a little challenge.
Appreciate it. Yeah, I wish I was a little more thorough in my reading. I might have been able to get one or two more, but fair question.
This has been a really fun podcast, and like the game, this one will be a little short, but before we end it, we got to get into our rabbit holes. Rabbit Holes is the part of the show where we talk about something that we've been obsessing over recently, or maybe just something that happened this week that we want to chat about, or some internet rabbit hole that we fell down. And you know what Elden Ring is, right?
Yeah, you mentioned it a little bit, yeah.
So Elden Ring's this big open world fantasy RPG game that tons of people are looking forward to. It's by the guy who made Dark Souls. And I had zero interest in it. I actually don't like the Dark Souls games. I think the atmosphere and the exploration look amazing in those games, and I've actually tried a couple of them. But the fact that the games don't tell you squat about how they work, about how the RPG systems work, about how stats work, that all really turns me off. I don't like any video game where I have to go online to find out. I like games that teach themselves. I like games that you have to practice to understand. I don't like games where I have to go to an external source. That's a big red flag for me. So I've never really been able to get into those games. Also, obviously, everyone knows this, the difficulty is pretty intense. I've tried to play through Dark Souls 1 twice now, and both times I stopped at the Capra Demon because you either have to grind or you have to just try over and over until you get burnt out like I did. But the whole reason I'm going on this rant here is because I was watching all the footage they released for Elden Ring this week. It's like the first actual gameplay reveal. They had like 2 reveal trailers before this, very minimal. And this time, I am fascinated. It looks really good. And I think the reason why is because it's open world. In Dark Souls, you get stuck on a point. There's not much else you can do until you get past that point. There's a little bit of nonlinear exploration, but you progress through the world in a very particular way. But the fact that this game is open world means if it's really difficult, which it probably will be, if I get stuck on a point, I could leave and go explore somewhere else. I think that'll really work in the game's favor for me. So I guess all I'm trying to say is I'm actually kind of interested in this game now, and I'm seriously debating whether I should invest in a PS5 in the future. I don't have the money for it. They're so hard to find, but darn it, I kind of want one now.
I think that's the sign of good marketing if a game appeals to a new or additional demographic. So I think that's pretty cool that it makes you consider kind of getting into a genre that otherwise had done you dirty.
Right. And who knows, maybe the game will have tons of crazy RPG systems that I'm like, bleh, no thanks. And then I'll go play more Breath of the Wild. But I've been eyeing that game this week, being like, dang, kind of want to play this. What about you, Marcus?
Well, I was going to kind of talk about something that I did recently. I went to 2 friends' wedding. One of their kind of connection points when she went to the mic and kind of told her story, they had, little speeches. She mentioned how one of her first interactions with him was she walked into a room where he was playing music and he was listening to Japanese EDM, and she was like, this could be it. This could be my best friend ever. Like, that was one of the real points of connection, was they listened to, like, they called it Japanese EDM. Generally, it's like just anime music as well. Like, they're big fans of anime soundtracks. So one of my friends had this idea for the wedding. The day before the wedding, he was going to be the DJ for it. So he was like, hey, I can like slip something on the soundtrack. We want to like make a cool message or a song. And I was like, all right. So in an evening, I wrote kind of an EDM inspired song with all of the like cheesy stock plugins that I never use because they're like too much.
Like the decapitator kind of thing.
Like, yeah, like there's one called like the anthem lead, which is like, you know, like it's just really, really in your face. I also added a nice big air horn at the end. So
wah.
Yeah, let me just play a clip of it for you.
That's pretty sick. I actually really like that. You wrote that in an evening?
Yeah. I feel like in some little ways it shows, but in general I am proud of how quick I slapdashed it together. What was really helpful was a friend of mine. we were like helping set up the sound system for the wedding. There were like 4 of my friends there. We were all tapping out between taking my laptop with headphones and just mixing the song.
At the wedding?
Yeah. Well, like the wedding itself hadn't started, but like this was like 30 minutes before the reception started. So we're just like in a back corner huddled over this thing. And we're like, I think the drop needs to be longer. I'm like, yeah, do it. It made for a very hectic evening, but it was just so much fun to have other people who were invested in its success along with me.
I once again bow to your superior creative integrity at being able to do something like that in one night. That's really cool.
Oh, I guess I should say the bride and the groom did love it.
That's very sweet. Thanks for sharing that.
Speaking of me writing slapdash songs, next episode will be the episode where I play a special uke song that will include all of the names of people who have reviewed the show. So review now or forever hold your peace.
This is your last shot. If you want to hear Marcus sing your name or your username, write a review for the show and let us know where it's at. If it's on Apple Podcasts, we will see it. If it's elsewhere, shoot us a link. You can tweet us at LevelWithUs. That's at LVL with us on Twitter. Or you can send us an email at LevelWithUsPodcast@gmail.com. And feel free to share with us your own quick jabs and star pieces for the next game we play on the show. Speaking of which, this week we will be playing Demon Turf, a new 3D platformer that just came out this week by developer Fabraz and Platonic Friends. So, like I said, if you have any thoughts, send them our way. But until then, I'm Jared.
I'm Marcus.
And we'll level with you next time. Thank you for leveling with us. Most of the music that you heard in the background of this episode comes from A Short Hike and was used with permission from the composer Mark Sparling. You can find his music on Spotify, Bandcamp, and other platforms, and links to his music are in the description. All other original music was composed by Marcus. Thanks, Marcus. I have recommended this to friends who I know don't normally play indie games because I truly believe in it enough that I'm starting to break up. I truly believe... No.
This game changed my life.
It saved my marriage.
That's probably true of someone in the world, by the way.
Probably.